There are two very important reference types when you're working in a spreadsheet, and one is called relative references. You've probably already worked with those. And then something else called absolute references, which are extremely powerful and important. So a relative reference changes as your formula changes for you. So if I have these prices and these quantities and I want to get a total, it's as simple as multiplying the price times the quantity. When we do that, we can see that it fills in our B5 and C5. Those are the references to these cells on the left. As I fill down my formula, the numbers change accordingly because the formula is changing accordingly. And as I go from one cell to the next, we can see that the row number is changing from 6 to 7. The columns are not, however, they're still B and C. So they're changing relative to where I want that formula to be calculated. But what if I didn't want them to change? So let's calculate a subtotal for ourselves on this right-hand side. It's the exact same numbers as on the left-hand side. So I'm just going to drag down for my subtotal. These are relative references to the cells on the left. But what I need to do is I need to multiply my subtotal by the tax. And in this little example, the tax is 13%. So in order to get my total, I'm going to take my subtotal and I'm going to multiply by 1 plus the tax of 13%. And when I drag that down, look what happens. I end up getting some errors. Now, why is this happening? Well, it's happening because it tried to drag down the tax amount. In my first cell, we can see my 13% is highlighted by the purple rectangle here to state that that's where the tax is coming from. But in my next cell down, it tried to use the next cell down for the tax. It's doing that for all of them as we go down. It's going down. Well, I don't want it to go down. I don't want it to be relative. I want it to stay constant or be absolute. That's where your good friend, the dollar sign, comes in. If you put a dollar sign in front of a row number in a reference, it will not change as you drag down your formula. Similarly, you can put the dollar sign in front of the column, and if you were to drag it around, the column won't change. But right now, I really only need the dollar sign in front of the row. So as I drag this down now, I'm going to get my new totals with the tax applied. Now they're not rounded to 2 decimal places for dollar values, but there we go. And it's using a absolute value. It's going to use I3 every single time when I drag that down. So really quickly, an explanation. If you were to have just the reference A2, that's purely relative. Everything can change. The rows, the columns can change. And you can see the descriptions of the other options that you have here for you, where the columns might be relative or absolute and the rows might be relative or absolute. And if you don't want anything to change, you put a dollar sign in front of the column and the row.